Champions, Bill Miles Productions. Sound roll 1, camera roll 1. Joe Yancey.
Joseph Yancey, you were the co-founder and organizer of the famed Pioneer Track Club in New York in 1936. I wonder if you'd tell us something about the beginnings of that organization.
I'd be happy to, Clayton. As you said, the New York Pioneer Club was organized in 1936, and there were two other co-founders. Bob Douglas, the owner-manager of the famous New York Renaissance basketball team. They were the world's professional champions. And Bill Culberth. Bill Culberth was a member of the NYU training staff. And when we started, we were a club of minority athletes. That is, a club of athletes of color only. But of course, even at that time, I coached everyone. In 1942, up to 1942, the club was, as I said before, composed of one ethnic background. In November of 1941, we got together and said, this is not the way it should be. The Constitution was changed, and it read as follows, that the New York Pioneer Club shall be composed of athletes regardless of race, color, or creed, or national origin. And from that time, we became a United Nations organization. In fact, we spearheaded the interracial movement in sports. This was about 4 or 5 years before Jackie Robinson entered the big leagues. And when we organized the club, we had a vision, a projection. At that time, minority athletes were not into swimming or into fencing and gymnastics, and on the Olympic level or even the international level. And we wanted to do something about that because there was no facilities for those types of sport. But as you know now, after 48 years, we only have been able to field a track and field team. And that's the history of the New York Pioneer Club to date. And as you mentioned, I'm still in my same capacity as director, coach of the and head coach, and I'm into my 52nd year of coaching.
Where did the club meet? Where did you?
Well, we had during the summer, the spring and summer, we met at McCoon's Dam Park. That's 161st Street and River Avenue. And of course, during the winter, right here in this armory at 369th Regiment Armory, and we've been here all that time. This has been our winter headquarters, right here in this armory.
Would you talk about some of the athletes who were part of the first Pioneer Club?
Well, let's see, some of the first athletes. Well, Ed Greenwich, Rudy Ned, Warren Bright, Saul McCann, Stafford Thompson, Reggie Pearman, Reggie Pearman. It was Dr. Pearman now. It's hard to remember them all when you want to. Herbert Thompson was our first champion. Deolis and Bill Taylor came over from from New Jersey rather. And then our first field man was Harry Schneider. And then later we had Bernie Mayer, Irving Kintish, Stan Lamford, Ben Schulman. And there's so many, actually, Clayton, I really can't remember. I should, but we've had so many fine athletes that came through the New York Pioneer Club. And I've left out so many, it's difficult to really remember them all.
Did you feel at the beginning that you were approaching track and field in a special way with the coaching methods that you were using that you felt were somewhat different?
Rather, definitely. I approached track and field as a teacher. Because in the Pioneer Club, first off, you had to be a gentleman. Discipline, punctuality, and a understanding of the traditions for which the New York Pioneer Club was formed. In the New York Pioneer Club, there was no profanity. You had to act like a gentleman at all times, on and off the track. That was very important. And you had to maintain integrity. And I can say that since 1936, the Pioneer Club has been fortunate And I have been fortunate to have been associated with so many fine gentlemen who came through the doors of the New York Pioneer Club.
How did you get these young men to join the club? Did you go to
Well,
their
they came from the 5 boroughs of New York and from Hudson County, New Jersey. And as far north, and even the outlying counties, Orange County, Dutchess County, they came down to the New York Pioneer Club because our fame had spread. And they knew it was a club that accepted anyone who was of good character and just had a desire to run. You didn't have to be a champion, just a desire that you wanted to run.
Now, as far as the champions you were associated with then and over the years, what kind of qualities, what kind of special qualities were you looking for in preparing someone for that level of competition?
Well, actually, I mean, in preparing a champion, I mean, actually, they themselves, I mean, had developed to that level. And at that time, they had the dedication, they had the confidence, and they had the staying power to become a champion. And of course, they made great sacrifices to reach that level. And it was important that they make the Olympic team or make trips to the national championship. And they trained hard, and they gave up a lot. They gave up going to parties and doing things that other individuals in their neighborhood and areas were doing, and they made a lot of sacrifices. And as I said before, they worked hard. They worked rather hard. And they were devoted to what they were doing. They were devoted to track and field.
Did you feel as a coach that you could see fairly early on championship caliber athletes?
Yes, there's no question about it. You could see it. The moment they walked on a track, you could see it. You could see it with the naked eye. Yes, God gave me that gift. In fact, I still have it.
What kind of things would you see? What would you
Well, I mean, in their carriage, the way they walk, the way they jog, the way they warm up, the way they do the exercise. It's just something, it's an intangible situation. You just could see it in them. I mean, a certain bounce, a certain movement is there. And the way they go about it, the intensity and the confidence, all that sort of thing is important. It's so many interesting situations that go into knowing that that person is going to move upward in track and field.
Is there really such a thing as natural ability?
Oh yes, definitely. I mean, some chaps have natural talent, and sometimes it's wasted. Sometimes it's wasted, and sometimes it's developed.
How is it wasted?
Well, they don't continue.
Or they don't work hard enough?
Well, they just don't continue. They give up track and field for other endeavors.
There are also some people who lack natural ability who may be able to make up for that.
That's true. Very true indeed. I've known of individuals who had, let's say, 50% talent who developed 90 to 100% talent by the hard work and dedication. Yes, quite.
You have trained athletes and coached athletes all over the world.
Yes, I've had that experience.
Are there particular kinds of programs you see being instituted in other countries that can raise the level of their competitiveness in a period of time? How would you know about that? If someone says, come to our country and develop our team, we have 5 years to do that. What kind of things would you tell them you have to do? Or what kind of things would you need?
Well, I mean, it's according to what part of the world you're going to visit. Now, if you visit Central or South America and endeavor to set up a program, of course, you have difficulty because the athletes there are more interested in politics than sports. If you go to Europe, at this stage of the game, they're already developed. They already have excellent programs, excellent coaching. So it's not the same now. But in the beginning, when I first started traveling in 1948, it was a different story. And we did do a lot going to Europe, Asia, Africa to set up programs. And that was done. My first trip abroad was in 1949, going to Cuba. And I set up a program there. And from there, I went to many other countries. And I set up training schedules and all that sort of thing for them to follow. Now, after I left, it was up to the coaches and the teachers of physical education to follow through on that. When I visit other undeveloped countries, I lectured the teachers of physical education. And I lectured on all the events of track and field, and I demonstrated those events. Just a little side, some years ago, during the 50s, I was doing a stint in Haiti, Port-au-Prince, Haiti, for the United States State Department, and Mrs. Yancey was with me, and she was a little surprised one day because someone asked, would I give a, no, beg pardon? Oh, sorry.
Champion, sound two.
You were talking before about a period of the 1950s. You said you had a story.
Oh, yeah, it's just a bit of a side. I was doing a program in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, under the sponsorship of the United States State Department Cultural Exchange Program, and I was lecturing and holding a clinic before the teachers of physical education of that country, and someone asked me to demonstrate the pole vault. So I took the pole and I vaulted over about 8 feet, and my wife looked at me in amazement. And then someone said, will you kindly demonstrate the long jump? So I did that, and my wife was really surprised. She said, gee whiz, Joe, I didn't know you could do these things at your age. I said, well, you know, they asked me in these countries, chaps come up to me and said, Coach, can you still run? And I said, yes, I can still run if I'm sufficiently urged.
When you visit these other countries and institute a program for them or advise their coaches, what role do you feel conditioning plays? Is that the center of the preparation, in fact, the actual physical conditioning of the athlete?
That's the basis. That's the basis.
Talk about that a little bit?
Yes, of course. I mean, generally, I talk about conditioning because no training should take place until after a conditioning period. Generally, a period of cross-country and calisthenics before you enter into a training program. And then after that, then you can start going through your schedules, your training schedules, definitely.
Would you tell us about some of the techniques, perhaps, that you give to athletes, or the particular styles that you assign to particular athletes?
Well, it's according to the individual, as I mentioned before. I don't believe in generalizing my coaching. I mean, some athletes require more work than others. Let's assume that I'm training a quarter mile. Now, some quarter milers, I've had quarter milers throughout my career who never run over 350. And then I've had and they're the sprinter type quarter milers. And then I've had quarter milers who are the half miler type quarter milers. And they run 660s, and sometimes thousands. So it's according to the individuals. And once again, I say that. And you tailor a program to fit the individual. So it's hard to generalize a situation like that. But there's always an outline that you can follow. In 220s, you say to a quarter miler, I'm using a quarter miler as an example because that's an easy event to talk about. You say run 12 in and out 220s. Well, some individuals can get the same out of running 6 in and out 220s. Or the same can be said about running 10 in and out quarters. You run 8 or 6 according to the individual, and according to the degree of his training, how far he's gone. See, you don't want to overtrain him.
What is the matter of overtraining about? Does that mean that an athlete is training past the point where his body is going to be in peak condition?
Well, he loses his sharpness. He loses his sharpness, exactly. He loses his sharpness. I mean, a good case in point, a good example of that is Ray Norton in the 1960s, just prior to the 1960 Olympics in Rome. Prior to that, Ray Norton, who was a great sprinter and a great fellow, he won just about all his races and won it in fine style. No one could touch him. And then, of course, if you remember, he didn't do very well in the Olympics. Didn't do
Champions. Milestone production. Sound roll 2, camera roll 2, sound 3.
You were telling us a story about Ray Norton.
Yes, Ray Norton was an excellent example of an athlete who had reached his peak and started down the downside. He reached that plateau and then he started downhill. In 1960, during that running season, outdoor season, Ray Norton was unbeatable. But during the Olympics, he didn't do well at all because he had run most of his races, his best races, prior to the Olympics.
Give me your example of excellent athlete. And also, don't forget to get this video a like.
He had reached his peak in the Olympic tryouts. And after that, all his races from there on in were downhill. That's, I think, is a good example of going downhill. In other words, that he'd run his races prior to the Olympics.
This is something, I suppose, that falls into the hands of a coach. A coach has to be aware of when an athlete is over.
Well, a coach and the individual himself, between the two. But I mean, no one, not even a coach, can determine as well as the individual himself can tell. I mean, you have to more or less gauge the situation as you go along. And today, I mean, an athlete will stay out a few meets in order to point for only certain meets in order that he would not overtrain himself and make himself get too sharp too soon, as the expression, that's the expression that the athletes use, too sharp too soon.
How important, what role does an athlete's diet, in your view, play in his training?
Very important. Very important. I believe in a balanced diet. Other than that, I say to my athletes, eat anything in moderation. Just don't overdo it. Because there's no use telling them, don't eat this and don't eat that, because they're going to eat it anyhow. Just tell them to eat in moderation.
What about vitamins and other supplements?
Vitamin therapy is excellent.
How do you recommend to a runner? Let's say you had a really fine sprinter who didn't really know about his vitamin intake or his diet. What would you propose to him?
Well, I give him multivitamins, and vitamin B complex and things like that. I mean, and then I actually would send him to a doctor. We have a doctor on our staff, or many doctors who are interested in the Pioneer Club, and I would ask them, for this particular athlete, what would you suggest? I would not try to be a doctor myself to that extent, or talk to someone who's a dietitian and speak to them about this individual. Because first I'd find out what type of food that he indulges in.
The Pioneer Club has a staff. Maybe you talk about how many people are involved. And who's
Well, we did have a staff, and I'd like to talk about that because in the past, the Pioneer Club staff played an important part in the development of the New York Pioneer Club, beginning with Lieutenant Colonel Jess Liscombe, retired, the late Lieutenant Colonel. He was the first assistant coach of the New York Pioneer Club, and of course, other assistant coaches were Rudy Ned, Wesley Wallace, and the manager of many managers, including Horace Wall, George Bryant, and of course, Ed Levy, who was my colleague and has been a great factor in the success of the New York Pioneer Club. And on the training staff, there was the late Charles Doc Turner, who was a legend in his own time and who was well known himself in the training circles, and Preston Alexander, Alistair Gittins, and many others whose names fail me at this particular time. But without the staff, the club wouldn't function. I might add at this time that all members of the staff of the New York Pioneer Club, like myself, all volunteers who spend their own money to go places with the team, and they do it because they're dedicated. And there's no expenses involved in any of these trips or operations.
I'm going to ask you to sort of move back across the years and perhaps come back to the present.
Yes.
To talk about the champions you've seen or champions you've trained, people you've prepared, what some of the really outstanding ones were like, how you came to meet them first. Really talk about the people who were most impressive in your experience.
Well, I'll talk about the Jamaica team first. I mean, of course, the Jamaica team that I coached in 1948, the Jamaican Olympic team, rather. I coached the Jamaican Olympic team in 1948, 52, and 56. But in 52, the Jamaican Olympic team won the 400 by 400 meter relay in Helsinki and broke the world's record, 3:03.9 at that time. It was quite a feat for a small country. And I'll talk about two or three of those athletes on that team. Herb McKinley, who was one of the greatest quarter milers that ever came out of the Caribbean or ever put on a shoe, because up to a few years ago, he ran under 47 seconds for 400 meters, more than any other quarter miler in competition up to that time. I don't know about today because I haven't been keeping up the statistics. But I met him at Randall's Island, must have been 1945 or 1946. He was at that time a student at Boston University, and we became friendly, and he spoke to me, and he's the one that,
Sorry.
oh, again?
Champions, Miles Film Productions, sound roll 3, camera roll 3, sound 3.
Just start, I coached the
Yes, I had the pleasure of coaching the Jamaica West Indian Olympic team in 1948, 52, and 56. But in 1952, the Jamaica team had a great year in Helsinki. We won the 4 by 400 meter relay team in 3:03.9, breaking the world's record. And I want to talk a bit about a couple of the runners. Herb McKinley was a great quarter miler, and at that time he had ran under 47 seconds for the quarter mile, more than all the quarter milers up to that time together. And he was a great character, a great runner. He was a runner that would run at any time that you asked him to run, no matter how fatigued he was, and another relay was coming up, he would run. And Arthur Wint, I met him, as I said before, I had met him at Randall's Island when he was a student at Boston University. And he was really the one that introduced me to the athletic officials in Jamaica, and they are the ones who requested, gave me the invitation to coach their team. And it was a great situation. I enjoyed it very much. Arthur Wint, who was about 6'4" tall and had a 12-foot stride, I met him in London the first time in 1948. And it was a great association with that team, along with George Roden. And George Roden, who was a student that was going to Morgan at that time, he hadn't entered Morgan yet, but he was going to enter that fall. George ran his first quarter mile at the Olympic Games in 1948. I had him. But on that Olympic team in 1952, he won the 400 meters. He won the 400 meters, and we scored well in that situation. Well, I met some wonderful athletes in my time, and the athletes in the Pioneer Club, you asked me how I met them. Well, they just came to the New York, they came to McCoon's Dam Park, or they came to the 369th Regiment Armory. We had a great rapport. In fact, we had a love relationship. I mean, there were some beautiful people, and they still are today, and I'm very close to them. I love them. Many of them look at me as their surrogate father, their big brother, or their good friend, or their coach. But I have a great love for them, and they have a great love for me. Anytime that I meet a pioneer in the street anywhere in New York, why we don't shake hands, we hug one another, because that's the feeling we have for one another. In fact, when I talk about it, these wonderful boys and what they went through because the New York Pioneer Club was a club that didn't have the more glamorous things that most clubs had. There were times when the money was very low, and I'd say to them, gentlemen, this is going to be a cooperative operation. What did that mean? That meant that we're going to Buffalo. It meant bring sandwiches. We did things like that. And we had a wonderful time together. And these young men, every one of them made good. Every one of them. They developed into some of the finest citizens, not only of New York City, but of New York State and the United States. Before I get further emotional, you better ask me another question.
You coached Roscoe Lee Brown.
Oh, yes, Roscoe.
Theater figure.
Roscoe was wonderful. Roscoe joined the club during the summertime while I was a student at Lincoln University. And he developed into a great runner running for the New York Pioneer Club. Roscoe is a dear friend of mine. And let me tell you a little incident about Roscoe Brown. Roscoe Brown should have made the Olympic team in 1941. He was a #1 half-mile in the United States. But in Milwaukee, at the National AAU Championship, an unfortunate incident happened. In the half-mile event, where Roscoe had defeated everyone in that race on 2 or 3 previous occasions. But the starter said that Roscoe had broke, but he hadn't broke. But what could you do? They disqualified Roscoe, and he didn't have an opportunity to make the team. That was a very, very discouraging and unfortunate incident. But Roscoe, as you know, has been a loyal pioneer through the years. He's a good friend of mine, and he was a picture runner. Picture runner. Reminds me of a situation down the garden, Madison Square Garden. We had great mile relay teams in those days, and Roscoe would be running the anchor leg, and he would be daydreaming, thinking about Tagore, the famous Indian poet. I'd say, Roscoe, hurry up. He'd look at me, okay, Joe, and just take off and pass everyone. It was such a wonderful rapport and understanding and love that we had with the athletes in those days. It was really great.
You coached men like Andy Stanfield.
Oh, Andy Stanfield. Reggie Pearman, definitely. Andy was a fine fellow, and still is, in fact. Andy came over to New York Pioneer Club and ran very successful with us. And even before he joined the New York Pioneer Club, he worked out with us. He did all his training with us, and he finally joined. Of course, Reggie joined the New York Pioneer Club when he was a student at Newtown High School, and he's been with us ever since. And Reggie is a leader. Reggie made the Olympic team in 1952 also. And Reggie is now a PhD, a member of the Department of Education in Washington, D.C.
You mentioned earlier that you had watched perhaps all of the events in the Olympics of this past Olympics.
I had that pleasure.
You had the pleasure of seeing them on television.
Yes.
Tell me some of your impressions of the runners that you saw.
Well, I was rather impressed with the female athletes this time. I mean, more or less. In fact, I was impressed with the men also. I thought, especially in the 200 meters where they finished 1, 2, 3, of course, Carl is superb, of course. He's a great athlete. I expected him to win. In fact, I expected him to win 4 gold medals, which he did. But I thought we did a great job in the 200 meters, and this chap who won the quarter mile did a marvelous job also. And the other races were good. Jackie Joyner winning the triple jump, and I'm just trying to recap my memory and think of the other events that we won. Oh, the 2 relays. Oh, they were great. The 2 relays were superb. I thought we looked so good winning those 2 relays. We really did, and I think overall we did a wonderful job. I don't think that the entry of the satellite nations would have made too much difference. Possibly in the women events it would have been a little different, but in the men events, no, I don't think so.
You think the distribution of medals would have been pretty much the same?
More or less the same, yes, definitely.
You mentioned earlier, Mr. Yancey, that you felt that a number of the Eastern European countries have women athletes that were particularly outstanding.
Oh, they are indeed.
Their absence might have made it. Perhaps you talk a little bit.
Yes, Czechoslovakia has some world record holder. Germany has, East Germany rather, has some world record holder women athletes, and Russia also. Oh yes, they have some great athletes over there. In fact, they're very strong in ladies' field events. Very strong in that, definitely. They would have dominated those events, and they would have dominated the quarter, the 400 meter and the half, and the 1500 meter. They would have dominated that. I doubt very seriously whether Mary Decker would have possibly won the 3000 if the European athletes had been there. And she didn't win anyhow because, of course, of the Bud situation, the Zola Bud situation. But in those events, the Eastern athletes would have fared rather well, definitely.
Let me ask you to talk about some athletes in some particular categories.
Yes.
The outstanding champions, perhaps, in particular areas. If you thought about maybe the one or two or three greatest champion sprinters you've seen over the years, who would they be?
Well, it's according to areas. I mean, of course, you'd have to go with Carl Lewis for modern time. I think Jesse Owens and Ralph Metcalf, no question about it. Those two. I had to go with both of them. Ulysses Peacock, also. Those. I had to go along with those two.
How about the middle distance?
Well, McKinley won. McKinley and Lee Evans. McKinley, Herb McKinley, Lee Evans, and yes, I stand on those two. Herb McKinley and Lee Evans.
And for the longer distances, the milers, perhaps the marathon runners, who would you?
Well, I'd have to go with this chap from what's this chap's name from Yale? I can't remember his name. The Yale lad. Not I can't remember his name. I'm sorry.
Could you pick? Could you say the outstanding miler I've seen would be?
Oh, the outstanding miler that I've seen? Well, I'd say Kip was a great miler. Kip Kino, the African, was a great miler. And I'm just thinking now, Roger Bannister was a great miler. I enjoyed him. This Englishman, name escaped me. The Englishman who holds the world's record. Coe, yes, Coe. Yeah, Coe seems to be a fine miler, and also.
We're out once again.
Champion, sound 5.
Mr. Yancey, I'd like you to talk about some of the great champions you've seen over the years, and let's start with the sprinters.
Well, that's a big order, actually, but I'll try. I would say that, in my opinion, I'd say that Jesse Owens and Ulysses Peacock, they were the tops in their era. And I guess at the moment, Carl Lewis is the tops at the moment. In between, there were many great sprinters, Hines, John Collis, Norton, the one I mentioned before. There's so many I can't even think of them, but there's. Let me try to recap some of them. Hines, see the Olympic Games. Harrison Dillard, not only a great high hurdler, but also a sprinter. Won the Olympic Games. Bonnie Ewell. Andy Stanfield won the 200 meter, also a great 100-yard man. And one of my own athletes who would have been greater if he had been more dedicated, that was Ed Greenwich. Oh yes, definitely. I think that just about covers it without getting in too deep, because that's a big order.
How about some of the middle distance runners?
Oh, middle distance runners? Oh, well, I mean, as I mentioned before, a quarter mile, I'd say Colonel John Woodruff, I mean, was one of the top ones, of course, and Mal Whitfield. You talk about in this country or around the world? You talk Arthur Wint, Sebastian Coe, Steve Scott. Let me see, Lee Evans, a great quarter miler. Davis, Otis Davis. Isn't that funny? When you try to remember them, you can't.
You talked at some length earlier about Herb McKinley.
Well, Herb McKinley is one of the greatest. Herb McKinley is one of the greatest. George Roden and Herb McKinley. George Roden was the Olympic champion in 1952. He was a great quarter mile. Oh, yes, definitely. And this chap who, of course, he's untried, though, the chap who won the Olympic championship this past Olympiad, it seems like he's on his way, but, of course, he's untried, and we're going to see what develops from here on in. And so many great quarter milers at the moment. It's quite a fine array of quarter milers.
Who are the great hurdlers?
Well, in the intermediate hurdles, of course, Ed Moses is head and shoulders above everyone else. He's just a magnificent athlete, and he's about the tops in there worldwide. I mean, I wouldn't put anyone else in his class. I'd just say Ed Moses, Ed Moses, Ed Moses.
Going back over the
Edwin
years,
Moses. Beg pardon?
Going back over the years, has there been anyone in that class?
No one in his class. No one in his class. Akabui was a fine hurdler, Akabui, but there's been no one in the class of Edwin Moses, definitely not. He's in a class by himself, actually.
In field events, are there people who come to mind over the years that you feel were particularly...
Well, Jesse Owens, number one. Jesse Owens, Willie Banks been doing well in the triple jump, and at the moment, Joyner, Conley, Stones in the high jump. I mean, he's a rather talkative fellow, but actually, must give him a lot of credit. He's been competing for quite a long time, and he's still doing rather well. And of course, you know about Dave Albritton, Mel Walker, and Cornelius Johnson in the 1936 Olympics. And we mentioned, let me see, shot put. We have Dave Lort in the shot put, who's doing rather well. He's doing over 70 feet. In the discus throw, you have Powell and the other chap, can't remember his name. I had him on my national team, but I can't remember his name at the moment. And every event that we're doing fine. In the javelin, we have Petrov. He's doing fine. And the hammer throw is our weak event. Our best man is Ed Burke, and he did a marvelous job. He came back after about an 8 or 10 year layoff and became our #1 hammer thrower. But in that event, we are far below the eastern countries, far below. But we have hopes of catching up with them maybe in the next decade or so.
I'd like you to pick up something for me that we did a little bit earlier. And it's a
Well, of
story
course.
about Roscoe Lee Brown in Milwaukee. Would you tell us that story again?
Oh, yeah, so that story I'd be happy to. Well, in 1948, the National AAU Championships were held in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And Roscoe, at that time, was the #1 half mile in the country. He had just defeated Bartram from the University of Michigan and Whitfield at various times in the past. And he was the #1 half mile, no question about it. In fact, he was at his peak. He was tops. And they were lined up for the half mile, and I never forget, I won't mention the name of the individual who broke because it was not necessary. But this individual broke, and several athletes followed him out. But Roscoe was not one of those athletes who broke. But he made the mistake of walking out after the break had occurred. So the starter said, "You broke also." He hadn't, but he disqualified all these athletes, and Roscoe was among them. And he was not able to run, and that was the qualification for the Olympic tryouts in Evanston, Illinois. And it was a very disastrous situation and most unfortunate, because Roscoe surely would have made the Olympic team. And that's what happened to Roscoe. And it was a disaster, really a disaster.
Mr. Yancey, I'd like you to complete this sentence. I'm just going to give you a line, and I'd like you to finish it. If you finish the sentence, to be a champion.
To be a champion. Well, you need many things. You have to, #1, you have to be fit. You have to have dedication, concentration, confidence, and the will to win. Thank you.
Slated? Champion, sound 6. Let me get a position for you. Okay.
Did you complete the line to be a champion?
Well, number one, you have to have fitness. You have to,
I'm sorry, would you say to be a champion and then
oh, okay. You're gonna, pardon me, you're gonna give me the cue?
No, you just start. I'll just point to you and you'll say to be a champion.
Okay.
Okay. When I give you the start, just say
Okay.
to be a champion.
Okay, all right,
Complete
all
it.
right, okay, all right.
Could we start?
Slated, please? Champion, sound 7.
To be a champion, you have to be fit. You have to have confidence. You have to have ability, and you have to have enough confidence to do the job, and you have to have dedication. All those things are important in order to become a champion.
Good, thank you.
Who would you like for me to do a video on next? What are your thoughts about this video? Please share them in the comments. Please be honest when answering these questions. Share this video with anyone you deem necessary. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.